Bitcoin is breaking 20,000. It has been a while. We've been waiting for a clean break. Yesterday, we did break 20 and then get rejected straight away, but it is finally actually breaking the 20K zone. And in today's video, I want to talk about what October means for crypto. What are the key dates that we have to keep our eyes on? What are the key announcements that we are waiting for that could dictate the volatility of the crypto markets? And then also, what are the altcoins that I'm looking at that are exhibiting strength if we do get a major break of Bitcoin that liquidity could potentially flow into and become very valid plays off the back of some of these dates? So today's video is your ultimate October preparation guide. I'm going to give you all the dates you need to know and use this as a guiding force throughout the month of October to, if you're ever stuck throughout the month, you can come back to this video and you'll know exactly when the key dates are, and you'll also know what altcoins to keep your eyes on. Make sure you smash the like button and subscribe if you're not subscribed. It is going to be a massive show. I must say for now, looking at the Bitcoin chart, because I'm getting a lot of questions, like, are you aping into altcoins now? Are you aping into Bitcoin now? Is this it? Is this the pump? We still don't have validation that this is the pump. So I know we all want to believe it's the pump, and it very well could be that pump that takes us to range highs. We can see currently range highs set at 23K to 25K. However, there is a very key zone, and this key zone I've identified is this yellow box here, which is 20,740 to 20,900. I would love to see a clean break and a hold of this zone, which means that we actually come above, then we come back down into this zone and hold this zone just for a little bit to verify any longs that I am taking. And I'm also taking a close eye to the alt BTC pairs whenever I am verifying altcoin entries. So holding 20K is the first step. That is very bullish. However, if we do want this bullish scenario to play out, which I'm sure most of us do want, then we do need the 20,700 zone to break. But these are my key levels that I'm looking at Bitcoin at the moment. We can see the DXY has come down from its highs. It's currently down since it went very parabolic, around 4%. So we do want that break of 110, which is represented by this horizontal ray here. A breakdown in the dollar currency index would indicate capital flowing into the stock market, and also Bitcoin as an extension of the stock market being a risk asset. So the lower the DXY goes, the more bullish inherently that is for Bitcoin. So a break of this 110 level and a break of this diagonal trend in line with a break of Bitcoin at 20,750, that would be a pretty good indicator to me that the market is starting to turn bullish. But those are just my key levels for now. Of course, it is possible we get rejected again. Many times Bitcoin has been rejected in the pursuit of this zone. Even last time we broke above this zone and then it wicked straight back down. So we do need consolidation if we are going to get excited for the month of October. There is also a chance to fake out. And if that does happen, then I am expecting the DXY to bounce off support at 109.33. So let's just keep our eyes on these charts. They're the two charts to watch right now in terms of crypto's direction. But there are some major key dates. The first set of key dates that you must keep your eye on in October is the stock market earnings season. We know stock market earnings season is so important because that will dictate the strength of the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 headed into November, because the stock market is such a big driver of crypto nowadays that the stronger companies come in with their announcements, the stronger the market performs, the stronger Bitcoin performs. If companies come in with weak announcements, like there's been some rumors surrounding Apple and Tesla production, then if those companies start to perform badly, that is going to overall hurt the NASDAQ's ability to perform, and that as an extension hurts crypto. So the earnings season becomes probably the most important set of dates for the month of October and November, because these big companies that are going to be reporting really dictate the future of the market, at least in the short term. So here's a calendar for you guys to refer to with the earnings season dates for October. We could see that today, it is currently October 5th. There's not many announcements, but as the month goes on and on, there's some major announcements that come in. For example, we got Netflix on the 19th, Apple, the biggest company on the NASDAQ, on the 28th. We have Google on the 26th, Facebook on the 25th. So that 25th to the 29th, that is the major 4 days that we have to keep our eye on. We also have Intel and Snapchat slightly before. So we have some very big announcements coming from these companies. Now, just note, these dates aren't necessarily fixed. Companies do change their earnings dates as we approach the date. For example, Meta changed from the 25th to the 26th. This may switch around a little bit, but this acts as a rough guide for when these big companies will be reporting. So earnings season is the first major set of dates that I would keep my eye on. Now, the next key set of dates is a macro dates. And these macro dates are going to determine how stringently, the Fed either keeps their rates or hikes their rates. So these set of macro dates will give the Fed more information as to how rate hikes will be perceived in the market. So these macro dates are very, very, very important. We have the Fed FOMC minutes on the 12th. We have the US CPI on the 13th. We have that interest rate decision on the 2nd of November. Now, I want to go a little more in depth and explain exactly what these mean and what I think could happen on these key dates. But just before we get into that, make sure if you're not signed up for a ByBit account, you sign up, because we got an amazing bonus at the moment for a $1,000 trading bonus. So if you have not traded futures before, and you have a ByBit referral link, you're eligible. Or if you don't have a Banter ByBit referral and you haven't traded futures before, you're also eligible for a $1,000 trading bonus, which means you get to trade Ethereum for free, because you get an Ethereum airdrop if you deposit into your derivatives account. So there is information in the description how to do that. If you aren't signed up, what are you doing? It's basically free money. So get involved, link in the description, and let's get straight back into the video. So these are the key dates, and this is why it matters. So firstly, we have US non-farm payrolls, which is essentially a measure in the change of the number of people employed during the previous month. We know that the Fed has been hiking rates quite strongly because jobs data has been quite good. The unemployment rate's good. The non-farm payroll data has been okay. Their economic growth has been iffy, but okay. So they do have a little bit of license to hike rates, and that's why they have been so strict with this, because their focus has been on getting inflation down. But if the jobs number starts to take a hit, and if the payroll number starts to take a hit, then that does indicate to me that the Fed has slightly less room to hike rates. So this is the first major set of data that we want to keep our eye on, and that will be coming in October, on October 7th. So we got the forecast of 250K, previously 315. So keep close eye on this non-payroll data. That is very, very, very important. The next key date that we have is the Fed FOMC minutes. This is the meeting minutes from the September 20 to 21 meeting. So it is a lagging indicator, but nonetheless, it may give us some slightly more information as to some of the reasoning behind the previous FOMC. That is happening on the 12th of October. So that is the next key date that I would keep my eye on. The FOMC minutes always do something to the market, so that date always tends to be a little bit of a time of volatility. But the major one that we are keeping our eye on comes one day later, and that is the US CPI data. Now, the CPI data is the US Consumer Price Index, and this will show us what the inflation number has done over the past month. So if inflation comes in lower, that is a good thing, because it means the Fed does not need to be as strict with its rate hikes. If inflation comes in higher, that is inherently a bad thing, because it means that whatever the Fed's doing is not working, and it means they probably need to keep going to get inflation down. They've been pretty firm on the fact that their number one focus right now is getting inflation down. So we do want to see a lower number. So the latest release came in September 13th, came in at 8.3%. We are forecasting an 8.1% set of data for October 13th. This is a very key date. It's in 1 week time, and we know how volatile the crypto market is around the CPI numbers. We want a lower CPI than 8.1% if we do want crypto to perform well in October. So let's just keep our eyes on this. If inflation comes in between 8.3 and 8.5% again, that is very, very bad. It means what the Fed's doing is not working. It means the more they're hiking rates, the more stubborn inflation's being, and that is a very, very bad thing, because that could potentially extend the runway of rate hikes. But there is one thing that Rand talked about on yesterday's show that could potentially be a mitigating factor for these rate hikes, irrespective of the CPI, and that is the fact that the United Nations is calling on the Federal Reserve and other central banks to halt interest rate increases. So there is a lot of pressure now on an international scale for the Fed to stop hiking rates. Why? Because by them hiking rates, they are crushing international economies, especially developing countries with weaker economies. They are crushing their dollars, because now in US dollar terms, these companies are significantly poorer, and they run the risk of debt default because they can't pay back their debt in US dollars. So this is a big, big issue for developing countries, and even Europe right now, which is obviously full of established nations like England and Germany. A lot of countries are now really, really struggling with the higher US dollar. So there is a little bit of pressure now from the UN for the Fed to manage these interest rates. And the IMF managing director said the Fed has a very high responsibility to consider the impact on the rest of the world. So that is definitely something they need to keep into account. Bridgewater's Dalio said the short-term interest rate is about right at the moment. So he thinks it's right. It's correctly priced. And he says, I no longer think cash is trash. Very interesting comments coming from Dalio. We could see the example of a pivot, not just in the US, but also in other economies. We had the Bank of England starting to buy back bonds. That is a form of QE. That essentially is a mini pivot in many ways. It was an emergency, so they really had to, but that is still one example of an economy that's starting to shift their tone a little bit. Australia, for all my Australians out there, you guys know I live in Australia as well. The RBA only hiked rates 25 BPS. They are the first major central bank to pivot to a smaller interest rate hike. If you guys remember, the previous hike in Australia was 75 BPS. Bond yields in Australia are plummeting following the smaller hike, and the 3-year government bond yield dropped 40 BPS, which was the single biggest daily drop in 11 years. Now, could Australia be foreshadowing what is to come for the US with a lesser rate hike? Potentially. And this could be a little bit of an indicator as to what's to come from other developed nations, because if Australia can't afford to keep hiking rates with a relatively stable economy, then the US, who is almost single-handedly causing the destruction of wealth globally with the other currencies dropping in relative terms, then they could definitely they could definitely pause rate hikes to some extent as well. So let's just see what happens. By the way, a pivot doesn't mean they stop hiking. They will keep hiking. A pivot just means a slight decrease in the severity of hikes from what we previously expected. So we were expecting a 5% interest rate mid next year. There is a chance that they start to slightly lower the threshold of rate hikes. So instead of getting that 75 BPS we thought, maybe we only get 50 BPS. That's definitely something that is on the cards. The next major data I'm keeping my eye on is the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index. This is essentially the US-wide indicator of the average increase in prices for all domestic personal consumption. So this tells us how much people are actually consuming. This is an indicator of the health of the economy, because the more people are consuming, the more they're spending, the healthier the economy. The weaker and the less they're spending, the worse the economy. But we're kind of in a weird position right now, because as crypto and stock market enthusiasts, if we want to see equities higher, we kind of want a weak economy. Now, I'm not saying we do from a moral standpoint, but from a market standpoint, a weaker economy is better, because a weaker economy means the Fed doesn't really have license to hike rates as severely. So the stronger the economy, the more the Fed can hike rates, and without causing a massive public uproar or outcry. So when we do look at data like the PCE, worse data in a way is kind of better for crypto. So it's definitely something to keep your eye on, is the PCE, obviously also the CPI. But just remember, the Fed's interest rate response does not happen until the 2nd of November. So although we will get CPI data on the 13th, and this will significantly sway the probabilities of next month's basis point hike increase, we will have to wait another 3 weeks until the US makes their decision. We will get a pretty strong indicator as to what they're going to do on October 13th, but we won't officially know until November 2nd. There always could be a curveball. So definitely keep your eye on that. But these are the major macro dates we need to look at in terms of the macro environment and what the US could potentially do with their rate hikes. But now let's have a look at some of the crypto-specific dates to keep our eye on. There is a great tweet here by Tolks that has some of the major crypto events that are upcoming. Because let me just explain my thesis to you here. If Bitcoin actually does break this 20,750 level that I'm closely looking at, and we hold above it, and we seemingly pump to 25K, what's going to happen to altcoins? Well, quite simply, I think they're going to explode. So if we do get a massive rally in Bitcoin, we do want to be positioning ourselves in altcoins, right? When the time's right. But if you're going to position yourself in altcoins, then you have to position yourself in the strongest altcoins, the ones with the strongest news cycles, the ones with the strongest relative strength versus the rest of the market, and also some of the ones that haven't run yet. Because I could talk to you all day about coins that have already run and already pumped, but there are projects that haven't pumped, but do have very strong momentum and do have strong news that may be yet to pump. So if Bitcoin does break these key levels and the DXY breaks down and we get a rally, now I'm not saying we will. There is also a chance October falls flat off bad data, but I'm saying if we got to also prepare for the positive scenario, and that is we get good data and Bitcoin continues to rally and the altcoins take off. And that is definitely a scenario that can happen. And I'm prepping for both ways. And the way I'm prepping for both ways is I'm being very strict on my entries. I have very strict stop losses whenever I'm trading, and I'm using low leverage because it will be a volatile month. Like, I almost prefer to trade spot, but I will do little 3x leverage plays just to increase my exposure a little bit, but also lower my risk in the sense I don't need to deploy the same amount of capital. So there's a few strategies I'm implementing just to keep my risk down in case it goes against us, but I'm also prepping for the bullish scenario as well, in case we do get that push up to 25K. And if we do, I want to be positioned correctly. So now these are some of the projects that are exhibiting strength. We have Chili's that I talked about weeks ago that has been a very strong performer. Chili's and Algorand ahead of the World Cup. They have been strong performers. We have Link's bid of staking. So their staking program recently went live. In fact, I have it here. I don't have it here, do I? Yes. The early access is eligible for Chainlink staking on V1. So that is good news for Chainlink. Obviously, we've been waiting so long for staking. That is very good news. We have the Atom 2.0 proposal rollout, Fold, Flashbots, and MEV boost, and then a lot of NFT news. And if you want to look into that, you can look at this tweet yourself or screenshot and read it later. Lots of upcoming NFT drops and announcements that could potentially benefit the stronger NFT ecosystems, most notably Sol and Ethereum. They're the two biggest NFT ecosystems. Flow, I think, comes in at third for NFT sales. So Sol and Ethereum could be indirect beneficiaries of NFT projects. We've got the Ute reveal, which is obviously on Solana, and a few other major NFT announcements as well. So that's one to keep your eye on. Another one I'm keeping my eye on is Gala, because if we just look at the Gala chart, this is remarkable how much this has dropped, and also remarkable how little this has pumped. And this play becomes interesting for a few reasons, because it's a hedged bet, and it's not a direct hedge. But when I say a hedge bet, what I mean is that you could be investing in Gala for the month of October. So let's say you believe the market's going to pump till November and you want exposure to the upside. Gala hasn't run yet, and if it breaks out, it definitely could run. So you may be exposing yourself to October's upside through investing in Gala in October. But what you're also doing is you're buying a project at almost historic lows or all-time lows for the year. You're buying it at such a low level that if you were forced to hold this long-term, let's say October goes against you, you don't have a stop loss, or you were just buying spot without a stop loss, and the market goes against you and we get another leg down, or it just stays flat in October and we don't get a rally, you can safely be accumulating Gala here, because this is a really, really good long-term zone. So if you wanted to hold Gala for like 3 to 4 years, then this is a good zone as it is, plus the chance of getting exposure to the upside of October. If you took profits on a breakout, then it's a win-win, because essentially the zone that it's currently in does hedge you against downside. It's a little bit different for some other tokens. Let's use Chili's as an example. One that is pumping into the World Cup. Yes, that will probably pump harder if October's bullish, but also since it's already pumped, you can't really continue to hold that long term if the month falls flat, because you're not buying at the best risk toward level like you are with Gala, because this isn't a very good long-term accumulation zone. So that's why I like plays like this, because you can get a breakout, but at the same time, it still is in a pretty good long-term zone. And I just want to zoom in a little bit to show you what I'm talking about. We have this descending channel. We did slightly break above this dotted diagonal, but what I'm looking for is a break of this horizontal level. We are forming a pennant formation. This is a bearish flag, which means there's a smaller probability of a breakout to the upside, but it looks like the upside breakout is happening. And if Bitcoin does continue to perform, then this is one that I think could perform that hasn't run. Sorry, I'm just still a little bit sick. PYR is another token that is showing a lot of strength and still hasn't fully broken out of its diagonal if you draw it like this. If you draw it on the 1 hourly, it has. And it's been one of these tokens that is showing a lot of strength off the back of a few things. Firstly, its external releases. It had many releases. Its new Vulcan Runner version on iPhone, new Berserk version, Lava Bank, the booster packs for its games. Many announcements here for the Vulcan Forge games. The big announcement, which really drove it, was FTX and Skybridge investing in a Series A round for Vulcan Forge. So they did a big capital raise. FTX invested, Skybridge invested. That is a big raise. And this was one of the major catalysts for the latest rise in the price. So they led Series A with $8 million with an option to invest an additional $33 million. So that's an additional, let's say, $45 million coming into Vulcan Forged. And it is also showing off the back of that very high strength on Lunar Crush. In fact, it was the number one token 2 days ago on Lunar Crush, and this is because everyone and your dog is shilling Vulcan Forged on social media. Now, that worries me a little bit, I'll be honest, because when every single person is shilling a token, that worries me. But if we do get the breakout at the same time, that means that it should tend to be stronger than the rest of the market because it has the social backing behind it. So it becomes an interesting play. And this is definitely one I'm keeping my eye on for October, one that I could accumulate. It's saying I've got the DXY here, but the next one is Solana. Solana had the hack. So the outage happened on October 1st. There was a lot of FUD surrounding the outage. It technically wasn't a spam attack. It was a rare consensus bug where a block wasn't processed correctly. It created a fork of the Solana network, a temporary fork, which was then deleted, and then they had to reset the block. It was a small error, but it did result in like 30 minutes worth of downtime, which was a very rare, not exploit, but a rare bug. So a lot of people said it was a hack. It wasn't a hack, but it did experience downtime. And that is an issue because whenever you have a blockchain exhibiting continuous downtime, it does become a slight concern, but it has not altered my thesis on Solana long term. Solana's approach as a team has always been go to market quick, get users quick, break shit, see what works, and fix it on the go. This is the polar opposite to what something like an ADA has done with their slow, tested, and rigorous approach to launching and testing a blockchain. So with something like Solana, these outages don't worry me as much as it would if it were another chain. It's still not great, but definitely this is also approaching a decent accumulation zone, and it is one that could potentially break out as well if we get a Bitcoin breakout. I just find it an interesting proposition because it's in a similar position to Gala that, yes, if it performs in October, it should exhibit strength, but even if it doesn't, it is still in a decent long-term zone where you're not shooting yourself in the foot from accumulating Solana at $30. Yeah, it could go to 20. Yeah, it probably will go to 20. But if you were forced to hold down to 20, if that is your strategy, if you don't trade using stop losses, everyone trades using a different risk profile, then Solana would be a decent play as well. You've got MATIC. This is definitely one that I've got my eye on. We can see we got this dotted diagonal, which I've got my eye on. The break of this and then the next break of the horizontal at 93 would be very, very bullish for MATIC. If we zoom out, we can see that it has been one of the strongest performers. It isn't at its range low. So many other projects like Solana and Gala, they're at their range lows. If we look at MATIC, we can see that it's at its secondary range low. So it's kind of formed two channels. It's this lower band and this upper band, which is holding quite strongly. Now, this is quite a bullish telltale sign for relative strength in the market. It's something that BNB has been showing recently as well. The reason for this is because there's only 25 days to go until ZK Sync 2.0, which is essentially a ZK EVM ZK rollup. This is a very cool technological initiative from the MATIC team, and this has been something people have been waiting quite a long time for. This will be amazing for MATIC scalability. So this is coming to mainnet in 25 days. One of the reasons why it's showing strength. The other reason is because the business development team has been on an absolute tear. And I'm honestly, at this stage, convinced that Polygon has the best business development team in crypto. And this is why it's in my long-term HODL portfolio, and it's one that I'm accumulating because Polygon is an absolute powerhouse. They have the DraftKings partnership, the NFL partnership, the Adobe, the Starbucks, the Disney, the Mercedes, the Meta, the Stripe, and the Reddit partnership. Massive, massive partnerships from Polygon. I did a tweet on this last night where I outlined the 12 partnerships here. I believe they're the best business development team in crypto. There are contenders. There are contenders that are more focused on enterprise, like Swift and some of these payments networks. But if we're talking pure branding as a branding play, then I think Polygon definitely has the strongest partnerships. And it's one of the reasons why it's showing strength, because it has, it may not have it right now, but it definitely has some inklings of real world utility coming in the future, because Starbucks loyalty program, for example, was built on Polygon. You have Disney's experience program built on Polygon, Reddit's avatar builder built on Polygon. So Meta integrating NFTs into the app built on Polygon. So all it takes is one of these to take off for Polygon NFTs to explode. And that's one of the reasons why Polygon's been so strong, and one of the reasons why I like it. Another token that is looking quite strong and could be a decent performer is Link. Because Link recently announced, they had their big conference and they announced some big things. The Swift integration. If you guys don't know what Swift is, it is the biggest global payments processor, processing $1.25 quadrillion a year. DTCC which is another payments processor or equities provider, is a $2.4 quadrillion market. So they process $2.4 quadrillion in securities every single year. BNY Mellon also processes trillions of dollars per year. So they are starting to really establish themselves as the main crypto oracle. And what a needed product in crypto, guys. We need oracles for price data. All these major players like Swift and DTCC, they need oracles for crypto price data, because if they are starting to offer crypto to institutional clients and retail clients, then they need accurate price data. And Link is the number one provider of that. So having these big partnerships is awesome. I said in an industry full of fakes and facades, Chainlink is a shining light of real utility. And if we're looking at projects that are going to be around in 5 years, knowing that most will fail and knowing that a lot of our bets aren't going to play out, I can almost tell you for sure that Link will be needed, because there's a strong need for oracles in the market. Now, whether the token performs is another question, because tokenomics are a major driving factor, something Link hasn't really had on its good side recently, but they did have their staking upgrade, and they had their economics 2.0 revamp, which I think does help, and it definitely becomes now one to watch in the near future off the back of some of these announcements. There is also one more thread, which I won't go through now because it's very long, but PC Principal did a thread of tokens he's watching in October. Just as a disclaimer, he said watching doesn't equal position. I am the exact same in today's video. So just because I say I'm watching something doesn't mean I'm buying it now. As I said, I am waiting for a Bitcoin break and a confirmation of that break, which we may get quite soon. So this may be something that plays out soon, but I am watching that. And I'm also watching the Bitcoin pairs on every single one of these altcoins, because the Bitcoin pair is arguably just as important as the altcoin pair on a lot of these tokens, because we also want to see relative strength versus Bitcoin. Atom, for example, this is dropping versus Bitcoin, so you may want to wait for the next major support before loading up. Sandbox, if that was a token you think is going to perform well, you may want to wait for the next support before loading up. This actually looks like it's on support right now. So always look at the USD pair, but then also look at the Bitcoin pair, because if you're trading alts, you want them to be outperforming Bitcoin. So it makes a lot of sense to have confluence with Bitcoin as well. So these, just because I'm saying I'm watching them doesn't mean I'm positioning there, but I'm showing you the altcoins that could perform if we get a good data here and two, a Bitcoin breakout, which is a likely scenario as well. So we have to be prepared for it. And these are some of the altcoins I'm looking at. PC Principal did a thread of the altcoins he's looking at. Just quickly, he's looking at VET. He has many, he outlines his thesis for each of these. I won't read them now, but you can look at the thread yourself. He says Flow's one that he's looking at. He says RSR's one that he's looking at. I actually do like RSR. That's an interesting one. Litecoin, don't like Litecoin. Curve, I do like Curve. I do like Curve a lot. I think DeFi's been dead for a while, but DeFi as an index looks like it could be a strong performer. And it is a narrative that tends to come and go a little bit. And when DeFi performs, your big tokens, your MakerDAOs, your CRVs, your convexes, they're going to be the ones that perform. So I think Curve definitely could be one that does pick up. YFI as well, because YFI, Yearn Finance, is another one. It's actually Andre's project, is another one that can perform well with some of the biggest vaults in the Ethereum network. And he also outlined some other ones he's looking at. He said Aptos and Sui, they're not coming till next year. ZK Sync is said to launch in October. That's definitely one to keep your eye on, as I mentioned before. And make sure you're giving them a follow on Twitter so you know when ZK Sync's coming. It's a very cool project. So yeah, those are the projects I'm looking at. These are the key dates. If you want a bit of clarity throughout the month of October, make sure you come back to this video and keep up to date with some of these key dates. Just to reiterate, FOMC minutes in October. That's a backwards looking indicator back to September. US CPI on the 13th of October. We have the UK CPI, which will actually be quite interesting given that their bank recently just implemented QE. Then we have the Fed FOMC decision coming later, and many earning announcements as well throughout the month, which are going to be major events as well. This is the earnings calendar. So I hope you guys are now prepped for October. It actually is quite exciting. I'll be honest, I haven't felt this excited in a little bit, just because I feel like there is a strong chance of a breakout. And I know it's looked positive before. It's looked like we could break out before, and we've been faked out, and we've been led down, and we've been led astray. I know it's frustrating, but we do have to prepare just in case we get the real breakout here. Because if it is the real breakout, there's massive opportunities. So that's why I'm certainly not going to be closing my eyes this month. I'll be sleeping with an eye wide open in case we do get a breakout here. So it is an exciting month. It is an exciting month. But if you guys want to ask any more questions, maybe on what tokens I'm looking at, what I think could happen in October, if you want more in-depth look at some of these macro events, and if I didn't explain them fully enough, then feel free to head over to my Instagram. We'll do a live Q&A as we normally do after these streams. So link in the description for that to my Instagram, Miles_Deutscher, and we can have a little look. At these tokens together on a Q&A. But thank you guys for joining me, and I will see you in tomorrow's show. Peace out.